Hello everybody, it's me, Riffraff Hornhelm, and I'm back again with another presentation from the Dwarven Vault. And today we have a monster review. Now today we're going to talk about lycanthropes. This is going to be a little bit longer review than normal because we have 5 different ones to cover, and I'm going to cram them all into one review. And these are the lycanthropes that are shown in the original monster manual for use with basic Dungeons and Dragons and advanced Dungeons and Dragons, most specifically 1E as it's known today, or most typically known today. In any case, the lycanthrope is a very, very cool creature, and it's one that has a, at least from the sense of things like werewolves, people understand that pretty good due to cultural popular references in books and movies and comics, etc., etc., etc. Very cool creature, but it's not the only one out there. So let's talk about lycanthropes. I mean, first off, all lycanthropes are humans that change into animals. Now, they do this in darkness, and at least per the book, it says that 90% of the time they would be compelled to assume the shape during the time of the full moon. Okay. Makes sense. I mean, it's kind of aligned with what you see in the movies, but it is a bit different for each of the ones that are out there. Now, of course, the way in which you become a lycanthrope is by being bitten. And the bite has to do it's a special formula that essentially equates to roughly about 50% of damage to you. As to whether or not you then are going to become a lycanthrope or just die. If you don't die all the way and you have more than 50% of the damages from the bite of a werewolf or were-tiger or whatever it may be, then you too can join the ranks of lycanthropy and become one. Pretty cool, right? Now, of course, if you're bitten, how the hell do you get around it, right? The most common way of doing so is eating belladonna, and if you consume it within 1 hour of being bitten, it has a chance of defeating the disease. You also have a small percentage chance, of succumbing to the poison from the belladonna. Okay. The other is to have a cure disease spell cast on you by a 15th level or higher cleric. In any case, if you're cured, you're going to be out of circulation for a few days. If you do become a lycanthrope, it typically happens in 7 to 14 days or something like that once you've been bitten. I guess there's plenty of ways of finding out. The easiest way, of course, is killing the actual lycanthrope who bit you and seeing them revert back to human form, and then you know for sure that you've been bitten by a lycanthrope. So let's talk about some of the different lycanthropes here. There's 5 of them that came with the original game. The original game, I shouldn't say that. The original monster manual. And let's talk about all 5 of them. The first one we're going to talk about is the Werebear. This is a 7+2 hit dice creature. It has a armor class of 2. It is a very powerful were creature. And it's also unique in the sense that it is not only exceptionally intelligent, but it's also good. It's not an evil creature. Now, of course, this is patterned after a certain creature in the Hobbit and referenced less so in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's clear that, it's patterned off of the Bjornings and all that kind of good stuff. And that's fine. It is a interesting creature to use. You kind of get used to the pantheon of creatures within Dungeons and Dragons when you're playing, and your first presumption as a player when you see something that is a werebear who comes and towers and rages over you is that it's not a good guy. But this really is a good guy, and they're very helpful. They have a claw bite attack. I think the claw, it's 1 to 6, and then it's 2 to 8 or something for the bite. And it also has a hug and squeeze attack. If you roll high enough, a 20, I think, allows you to as the werebear to squeeze your opponent for an additional 2 to 16 points of damage. Because they're exceptionally intelligent, they can be very helpful. And the ability to shift into this form is very useful. Now, they have one small drawback. This is the slowest of the were creatures. It can't even go as fast as a human. Most of the other were creatures are actually faster than humans, but this one only runs at about 3/4 the speed. Now, these creatures are very cool and they have some interesting abilities. I mean, typically they're found in the company of 1 to 6 brown bears. And if there are enough bears around wherever it is, it can summon 2 to 12 brown bears. That's a pretty nice little army right there if they're working on your side. They also have the ability to cure disease, and they heal at 3 times the normal rate. Their ability to cure disease is somewhat limited, but once again, all things that are useful to a good party, especially having somebody who can, cure diseases and, well, fight like this guy can. It is considered to be the most powerful of all the lycanthropes. Now, in terms of, dwarves and these, well, there's a very famous story about that part, but we'll come back to all of that after we've gone through the individual, the different types of were creatures. So next up is the were-boar. Okay, that's a 5+2 hit dice creature. It has a 4 armor class. Once again, man-sized when it converts into a boar. They are noted for their irascible temper and, they just cause problems all the time. And in their human form, they're not very nice people. They always have a temper. They're always getting into trouble, this kind of stuff. They have a, what does it say in the book? It says that their personality is like that of a berserker or something along those lines. A were-boar is not something that I personally have ever used as a DM, but at the same time could be an interesting creature to throw in there. If you find them in the wild, they're typically in dense woodlands or areas that are similar to that. And I don't know. I mean, like I said, I've never personally used one or run into one, but I could see this going either direction. Most of these creatures are not inherently evil. And this one is a neutral creature. Its intelligence is average. Average to maybe not a little bit below average. And, they're not necessarily going to be a bad creature. They could potentially be a good creature too, especially if they're mixed in with a group, an adventuring party. It all depends. So, interesting one to consider. Not the main one, but let's move on to the next one. Now, this next one is the were-rat. And this is a lawful evil one, and it is also very intelligent. It's not that large, but it's obviously larger than a standard rat would be. They would be on, the 3 to 4 foot range type of thing. And they are 2+1 hit dice. And they have an even higher armor class, since they have a 6 armor class. And they only do like 1 to 6 or 1 to 8 points of damage. Of course, you have to worry about ending up as a lycanthrope yourself if you get hurt enough. But still, not the worst on that side. And essentially, they do use some weapons. They'll use a short sword or a dagger or something like that. They're not ones that tend to travel in small groups, though. When you run into a were-rat, you tend to run into a bunch of them all at once. And of course, with them being lawful evil, they're going to want to screw you up. Let's put it that way. Now, were-rats are more common than some of them are, but at the same time, I don't want to say they're really common. I have had encounters that I have put my players into with were-rats over the years. I think they're a fun creature to use. It's kind of neat because if you take them in human form, they tend to be, smaller, furtive-looking, weasel face type humans. And people often think of them as either thieves or very low-level scullery boys, this kind of stuff. And having them change into a rat that chases after you, trying to bite you and cause all kinds of mayhem, it can make for a fun encounter. I've certainly done this before. Oh, and of course, there's one very important thing to remember with the were-rat is that it actually is capable of forming itself into three forms. It can be either a small human, it can be a same size as a were-rat, so half rat, half human, or it can just be a giant rat. So that gives you a little bit more flexibility with it. They do tend to live in groups. So it's nice to be able to take a number of them and integrate them into a town under the surmise of the people around them that they're human when they're actually not. So like I said, they're kind of fun to use in a dungeon. So that's the were-rat. Let's move on to the next one, which is the were-tiger. Their tiger. The were-tiger has a armor class of 3. It's 6+2 hit dice. They're about average intelligence. And of course, they take on the form of a tiger when they change from human form. They have 3 attacks, claw, claw, bite. None of them are particularly strong, but once again, you have to be wary of the ability to be turned into a lycanthrope, depending on how much damage they do. As a tiger, they also have one additional attack. They can rake with their rear claws, and that does 2 to 5 points of damage for each of the rear claws if it's successful. So, in theory, you could have up to 5 attacks at once. That would be nasty to run into under any circumstances. And, though I haven't brought it up yet, I have to. You can't hit these with normal weapons. You need silver or +1. Standard magic resistance. And, you don't have to worry about whether or not you can hit them with a fireball or something like that. So that's the were-tiger. Let's move on to the last one, the most famous, the werewolf. Everybody knows the werewolf from screen and from comics, books, all kinds of things. I mean, very popular in literature. The werewolf is a 4+2 hit dice creature, a little bit less than what I thought it would be, and has an armor class of 5. It doesn't do a lot of damage. It's like 1 to 8 damage, but once again, lycanthropy can result. There's also something called a wolf wary, which is a wolf that turns into a human instead of the other way around. Okay, makes sense. But werewolves, of course, they're nasty, but in the game, not as nasty as I thought they would be. I think they can show up in groups of 2 to 8 if you look at them as a wandering. So that's really all 5 of the different ones that are out there. Nothing super special about any of these. The biggest advantage on any of these, if you're a DM trying to work these into a dungeon, is the fact that they can all be human. And you kind of get to pick and choose based on the needs of your party or the needs of your adventure. You have 2 that are evil, 1 that is good, and 2 that are neutral, which gives you an awful lot to pick from if you're a dungeon master and you want to use these in an adventure. But don't forget about the fact that, yes, they have no standard magic resistance, but you do need +1 weapons or silver, or I should say +1 or better weapons or silver, in order to hurt them. And that goes right across the board for all the lycanthropes. So, do dwarves run into them? Oh, yes. I mean, beyond the obvious story with the Bjornings and so forth, which is from Tolkien, I gotta say that nobody that I know from the Dwarven side have ever run into a bear like that. We do run into were-rats. They're usually trying to infest the tunnels that, may not be far from where our workings are in terms of the mine. We've had some run-ins with them. If they get you when you're a real small number and there's a bunch of them, it can go badly. And we've had a few of our Dwarven brethren who have become, unfortunately, were-rats before we could get them to a cleric 15th level or higher in time. Oh well. Easy come, easy go. But generally speaking, us dwarves, none. Most of the rest of these, we're not going to run into them. However, in the gaming world, it's a little bit different. And we went out to our friends in the greater Hornhelm community and asked the DMs and the players, hey, what about the lycanthropes? What do you say? And the DMs came back, and of course, we're looking at 5 different ones, so they gave a range, and the range for them was about a 2 to about a 4.5, with a 5 specifically for the werebear. I actually think that's pretty fair. The players were a little bit higher on that side. They tended to look at it as more like 3 to 5 for the regular ones, and a 6 for the werebear. Okay. It's not that far off, and I can imagine that for the players it was more difficult either to figure out who the lycanthrope was or to be able to deal with them in combat in groups. Maybe. In any case, these are very interesting creatures and something that if you haven't worked into a dungeon, you should definitely look at. Remember that as humans, and with that wide variety that you have to work with, they're easy to integrate into your dungeon. So that, my friends, is the lycanthropes, all 5 of them. We hope you enjoyed today's presentation. If you did, please be so kind as to give us a like. Consider subscribing if you haven't. Definitely drop us a line and share with your friends. Most of all, come back and see us again real soon. We thank you so much for your kind support. Take care, everybody, and remember, dwarves rock!